I'm going to double check and make sure we're rolling on both accounts. As usual, I always have to look at my phone, make sure that we're live. I can't tell, you are in for a really awesome treat today. I have a special guest, but before I introduce him, just want to remind everyone, let me know that you're here, let me know where you're from, and participate, because this is going to be awesome. All right, I'm waiting to see if we are in fact live. Are we in fact live? Are we doing this? It looks like we are. I hope we are. It's not showing me on my phone, but if you are weighing in, then I'll know you're here. Let me tell you about our special guest, Neddy Morris, today. Neddy is a lot of things. And first and foremost, he's a humanitarian, meaning that he sleeps with a go bag so that in the event of a natural or conflict disaster somewhere around the world, on behalf of Shelterbox, Neddy deploys to deliver humanitarian aid to the world's most vulnerable people. And he's a lot of things. He's a team leader for Shelterbox, and that's how I met him. I spent 6 years looking for an organization that would meet my specific criteria and joined Shelterbox as an ambassador. But Neddy is a leader in actually delivering the disaster relief. He's also a lot of other things, an ex-water polo player, a wine expert, sommelier. He's an amazing guy. The reason that we're having Neddy on the show today, other than the fact that you're going to love him and his stories, is that Shelterbox really stands out, and perhaps why they've been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 2 times in a row. It stands out as a brilliant organization in terms of decision making and good thinking. And that's what we're going to kind of extract today. So I'm going to bring him on. He's waiting in the live stream green room. I'm going to bring Neddy on right now, and you're going to really enjoy this. Participate. Let me know that you're here. And we are rolling. Let's see, how do I do this? I'm going to add him. How do I get him? Add to stream.
There we are.
Hey, there, it worked.
Can you hear me?
Okay. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, just fine. Yeah, perfect.
Fantastic. I already introduced you because I knew you'd be all humble and well. But I've introduced you, given a tiny bit of background, and hopefully people will start weighing in and saying hello, telling us where they're from, and thanks for being on the show.
Well, I want to say, first of all, thanks for having me. And secondly, I'm here for you and your viewers. So whatever you want to talk about, I'm here for you.
Fantastic. Well, I love that. This is a show really designed to steal a little bit of time away from all the time, that we're told what to think. Do this like this, think like this, and instead devote some time to improving how we think. And that particular goal is what drove my interest in Shelterbox and how I met you. How did you get involved with Shelterbox in the beginning?
I learned about Shelterbox through Rotary. I'm a Rotarian. My parents were Rotarians. I grew up sort of with a mantra that you needed to, give back to your community and be there to serve. So I joined the Rotary Club as my kids got older, and I had a little more flexibility with time and a little more money because dues and all that. It's not free. But I joined Rotary. I don't remember how many years ago, and in one of my Rotary meetings, a gentleman came and talked about Shelterbox. And my old man was Forest Service. I grew up kicking around in the mountains. I camped all the time. I was a Cub Scout, Boy Scout. And for me, the tent just resonated. I saw the tent and I thought, that's really cool. We're, something that I love sleeping in anyway, a tent. We're providing that for families who've lost everything. And I think, that's what resonated. I heard about Shelterbox. I heard that, it's this legit organization. I did a little more research through Rotary and through my connections there, and found out that, something like 92 cents out of every dollar goes directly to the beneficiary or a deployment, something like that. It's a 4-star charity on Charity Navigator. I think there's only one charity in the world that's got a better rating than Shelterbox, and that's Rotary International.
Wow.
So It's a very volunteer heavy organization. We really focus on the beneficiary. Because of that, we are what we deliver last mile aid. We deliver it to the beneficiary themselves. A lot of organizations will just send it in country and let mass distribution sites get run by other organizations. We do not do that because we want to make sure we're serving the people we want to serve, which are the most vulnerable, single parent households, people with disabilities, elderly, ill. Those are the ones we want to take care of.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to say hi to a couple of people. We've got Vinay from India. We've got Ketty from Milan. And we've got Stephen from the United States, Portland, Oregon. So people are starting to come on.
Stephen,
please let
you're
us
not far
know.
from me.
Yay! So we've got, not far from Nettie. So we've got some people coming on, and please weigh in where you're from. And also, this is a very participatory show, as you all know, and this is going to be really, really fun. Before we get into kind of the meat of the purpose of this show, which is good thinking, good decision making, and borrowing best practices so that we can apply them in our own lives and spread good thinking out in the world, give a little hint or a snippet of how of the training, because the preparation, it's not, I mean, I said behind your back when you were in the green room, I said that you sleep with a bag at the ready, but it's not just a bag that's packed. There is a whole bunch of good thinking training that goes into being prepared for deployment, including and not limited to selecting people who are a good match for ShelterBox. So if you could give just an idea of the process so people know what they're going to get, like what they're borrowing from as we get into this episode today, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. There definitely is a particular type of person predisposed to being a response team member, and that is a person that's really analytical and observant. We specialize in going to disaster zones where things are just gone. There's no infrastructure, and we can't do what we did last time, right? We got to think outside the box constantly. There's all kinds of hurdles. There's all kinds of roadblocks in our way, and we can't just give up. Oh, the government said, no, we can't do it. Let's just go home, right? No, we got to figure out how to get it there and how to help the people. Oftentimes there's, political unrest. So, governments don't want to seem weak. There's all kinds of reasons why they may not want our help, or maybe would not make it as easy for us to get our job done. And we have to be creative and think around how to get either over or around or underneath that hurdle. And so you have to be predisposed to think, what can we do to solve the problem? I mean, as a kid, I loved jigsaw puzzles, right? I still do Sudoku and things like that. I love puzzles. And that's what it is. We go on a deployment. It's a big, giant puzzle, and we got to figure out how to make it fit.
So they clearly select for people who have a predisposition, but they don't expect you to be well armed before deployment with all of the good thinking and decision. There's a whole training. I know it's a long training. How long is the training process? Give us a little peek at it.
It's a year long. I took the initial test. It's over a year. I took the initial test in October of 2016, and I graduated as a response team member in November 6th, 2017. So it was over a year. It starts out with a multiple choice test that's online, and if any of you guys like Star Trek, it's the Kobayashi Maru. It's an unbeatable test. There are no good answers. You got to pick the best horrible answer. There's like 8 of them, and you've got to nail it. If you don't get 100% on the test, I don't think you move on. You might get to miss one. I don't know all the ins and outs of the way that they do the assessment, but the online test is open to the world, and well over 1,000 people. I think it was something like close to 2,000 took that test the year that I went through. And at the end of it, 18 of us graduated.
Wow. But the training was, how would you characterize the training once you were selected? Because I want to be able to for people to understand that they're going to get a little peek today at some of the good thinking best practices that you gleaned in your training. Obviously not a year's worth, but we're going to come away with some.
Sure. In it, there's a lot of just book knowledge. You need to understand the humanitarian system, the cluster system. There's a sort of a guidebook called the Sphere Handbook.
Hang on, keep talking. I'm going to go grab it.
Yes, the Sphere Handbook. So it is basically after the tsunami, the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami, when all these aid organizations came running in to help, and they all wanted to help, right? But we had so many gaps and overlaps with the response. There were areas completely missed, and there were areas that were, there was way too much aid in certain areas.
Wow.
So as a community of humanitarians, well over 100 agencies put people in together to sort of design a response, and they came up with this cluster system, and the Sphere Handbook is the handbook that guides how to navigate that system. We are in, we certain so clusters are like silos. They're channeled at a response. There's a logistics cluster, and there's, those guys are here. They're meant to, open roads and get transportation and get phone lines or Wi-Fi up so people can communicate, that kind of thing. Often they're usually ex-military or military guys, because they got the equipment and they could do that stuff.
Right.
But there's logistics. There's health and hygiene people. There's we are the shelter. Right. There's medicine. Right. There's all kinds of different. There's these 11 different clusters, and you should read about them. It's a really interesting book. So that's just part of our training. We learn about the system and that we're going to be working in. But the hardest, most challenging part, for sure, is the real self-assessment, the assessment of our teams, the assessment of our actions throughout the process. As we're training, we're put through mental, physical, emotional challenges, and the way that we react and handle those challenges was a big part of the training. It's really being aware of not just our feelings, which is really very important, to be assessing what's going on with me in this river of destruction. I need to know, right? And my team needs to know. If I'm down today, or if I'm not feeling well, they need to know. So a lot of it is learning how to talk and share with each other, things that are really personal, and learning how to open up about those things, things that we have been told in society we can't share as men, or things like that. It's really rewarding process to go through, and I think everybody should go through it, whether they're wanting to be a response team member or not.
Well, they're going to go through a little bit of it today. So I'm going to take a minute to say hi to some people. Suman, I'm glad you're here. Dane, I'm glad you're here. I'm horrible. Everyone knows on the show that I'm horrible with names, but fantastic. We have Jiraj from India. We've got, again, Ketty from Milan. Anyway, I'm going to probably miss some of you because the stream, as I always explain, is a little bit fast. But please weigh in that you're here, because we're going to have a little adventure. And we're going to borrow from Neddy's real life experience and going through a decision process. He's going to challenge. So we're going to test our good thinking together. And so be ready. Lay out the scenario. Well, let me preface this by saying, this is one of the scenarios that Nettie brings to organizations and leadership training that he does for organizations, where he borrows from some of this humanitarian shelter box best practices to help team leaders at organizations make better decisions and advance their good thinking initiatives. So you're going to get a little case study. We're going to experience a little case study based on his real life experience. All
Yeah,
right.
this is gonna be super fun. But let me just start out by saying, as we go through this, even though we're going to do a scenario that's in the middle of a disaster zone, and it was a real scenario, I want everybody to know this is true stuff. But there are parallels to your personal and private life and to your professional life. You can take these lessons that we're going to go through today and apply them in your everyday life. You don't have to be a response team member. You don't have to be in a disaster zone to use these techniques. It's a really it's powerful. It's good, and yeah, I think you guys are going to like it. So let me start out by saying high stakes decision making. Right? What makes it a high stakes decision? So the definition, I'm going to read this one, but the definition of a high stakes decision is the existence of large financial, physical, and or emotional prospective loss outcomes and the presence of high cost to reversing the decision once it's made. So that's what makes it high stakes, you guys. There's either going to be loss of great wealth or loss of lives. And because of your decision, it's going to be impossible to take it back. It's really important to nail it. It's really important to get it right. So you got to think. You got to think about everybody involved.
I'm going to hang on before we get started. I always have to jump in to say hi to people because
I wish I could see them too. I wish I could see the questions.
This is Vijaya. Hi from India. We've got and all over from India. But if I try to read your local other than India, it's very hard for me to see. And then you're going to see my face up close. So I've got with some people who are with us regularly. We're going to definitely jump back and forth because I'm going to need your help. Nettie's going to challenge me. I'm going to need your help. And the one thing I want to keep in mind is, and this is this is not necessarily part of the shelter box protocol or part of Nettie's protocol, but the whole idea of a good decision process is to sometimes divorce the process from the outcome, because we oftentimes make good decisions that result in poor outcomes. And we oftentimes make bad decisions that result in good outcomes. So the thing I like about this thing we're doing today is to really think about the decision. The outcome will be there for reevaluation, and there'll be some things you're going to learn at the end, but try to think about the process separate from the outcome. Anyway.
Okay.
Ready.
Okay. So some of the challenges we face as response team members, we've got internal and external challenges all the time. There's danger of disease, weather, aftershocks of things going on. So we've got all these distractions in our heads. We got to let that kind of go. We got to be like the rock at the bottom of a river. And while the river is turbulent and all over around us, we got to be calm and look around and be observant. So there's also a lot of traps that happen with experienced response team members, right? We this is the way we've always done it. We're doing it this way. To hear dissenting voices, the tendency to focus on short-term outcomes instead of, hey, is this really going to be good for them in the long run? What if we set this camp up in a flood zone and just because it's summer now, we got to think about all that stuff.
Really good points.
We got to not let emotions get to us, and that's one of the hardest things that happen. And we've got to always be willing to learn. There's a failure to learn oftentimes in these responses, and because of that, agencies or humanitarian groups aren't as effective as they should or could be. So you really need to pay attention to all those things, all these external things. But as we do that, let's play a little game. Okay. So we're going on deployment, Becky. We're a team, and we're going to deploy to Nepal after the earthquake in 2015. So we're the first team on the ground. No one else. First team for Shelterbox. We hit the ground running. There's 4 of us total on the team. You're the team leader. Okay, you're the team leader. This is 48 hours after the earthquake hit. It's destruction everywhere. It's an urban setting. Their buildings are down. There's rubble. There's debris. Unfortunately, there's death and destruction everywhere. Uh, we arrive at our hotel, and one of the team, let's just say it's my first response ever. And I see the hotel and it freaks me out. I'm like, guys, I don't want to stay there. This really happened. I'm concerned about the quality of the building. I don't want to stay here. But you, Becky, and the other two members of the team are experienced response team members. You've done this lots. So do we A, move hotels at a significant additional cost to a better building? That way I'm happier and I'm going to sleep better at night. But the new hotel, it's an hour outside of the capital where we're doing all our work. It's an hour outside. So it's going to add an hour coming to work in the morning and an hour going back. We can only travel in daylight. So it's going to cut 2 hours out of our working day. Or are you, as the team leader, going to allay my concerns and share your experience of disaster response, knowing that every extra penny spent means less people sheltered if we are spending money going back and forth and going to some other hotel and not helping? So what are you going to do? Team
All
leader?
right. Let me start by asking a question that I would probably know if I was the response team leader, which is, what are the top objectives that are the same for every deployment?
You cheater.
No, because that's what I would want to know. That is what I would want to know, because if I was experienced, I would know that. Like, I would know.
Fair enough.
If it's more important to get a lot of people served fast, if it's a lot, to make sure that we can serve every dollar. I mean, I don't know. So give me that. Then I'm sure I'll screw up a lot.
We have 3 non-negotiable rules.
Okay.
3.
Okay.
In order.
Oh, in order of importance.
Yes.
Number 1.
Be safe.
Safety.
Get the job done. Represent Shelterbox and the donors well. Those are the 3. In order.
So be safe
is the top. Stay safe. Get the job done. Represent Shelterbox and the donors. And when I say represent the donors, that's really important. A lot of people don't understand that. They don't get that when we're on deployment, we must be very thrifty, because people are giving all kinds of money to Shelterbox to help people.
Right.
They're giving it to me to go and have a steak dinner and a bottle of wine. Right. So we are mean and lean and tight with the money. And we need to respect the donors. That it also goes to the point where we shouldn't be giving them things they don't need. Right. If they're in a cold area, why are we giving them mosquito nets? Right.
Oh.
If they're in a warm area,
well, what if they're asking for them?
If they need them, we'll give them to them.
But what if they're asking
they don't
for
need
them?
it? Without.
All right. Let me ask you. Okay, so we've got more people on the call. I just want to say hi to Baburam from Nepal. From Nepal.
Hi.
And this is awesome. Okay, so first of all, you guys and gals on the call, should we stay in this hotel? I mean, I'm the team leader. I can tell you I've been through things like this before, and we have not had a problem with the hotel. Or should we worry about new Nettie's concerns about the safety of the hotel? Should we, number 1, stay in the hotel? Or number 2, should we travel to the hotel that is deemed more or far away, an hour each way? All right. So weigh in, and while you start to weigh in on 1 stay, 2 go, I'm going to ask some questions. All right. And let me ask you this: how safe is the road to the hour-away hotel and back? Because if you're telling me that safety is first, then I need to know how safe it is to go to that hotel, like the roads and the conditions. You said that we're the first ones there, the first responders there?
Yeah, Becky, we just arrived. We're all together. We all flew in on the same flight. We all landed together. We all took this car to the hotel. We arranged a car service, took it to the hotel, and we're standing out in front of the hotel right now. That's what we see.
Okay. Who can I talk to?
Here's what you can know as a humanitarian.
Okay.
car accidents are the number one killer of humanitarians in the world. You go into a disaster zone, cars are taken, and we call them the gorillas, the silverbacks, the big organizations like the UN and the IOM and UNHCR and UNICEF. They come in and they get all the good hotel rooms and they get all the good cars. I guarantee it. So all these other little agencies like Shelterbox, and there's tons of them, Samaritan's Purse, and I've been tons of them. So these agencies, we get the scraps. We got to find hotels that, that are left, and we got to find cars that are left. And oftentimes there's only 2 seat belts for 4 passengers. There's bald tires. The brakes don't work. It's whatever we can find. So, and quite honestly, the number one killer of humanitarian aid workers in the world is car accidents somewhere.
All right.
Now, that being said, I will also tell you, Becky, it's a disaster zone. I don't know what the roads look like, but I can tell you, looking all around right now, this place is a mess.
Is there anyone that can give us?
There's a logistics team that's been here since the start cleaning things up, but I don't know what it's like. I'm told that we can. I mean, there's reports that we can get out to that area, and that's why we're talking about that for the hotel. So there you go.
So I guess I know you're going to yell at me for asking a lot of questions. So I guess I am the chief curiosity seeker at Applied Curiosity Lab.
Knowledge is power. It's okay to ask questions.
Okay. So my question would be,
I just might not have an answer.
Right. Okay. So with the logistics, I think my first thing would be to get with the logistics team and try to understand the conditions from point A to point B so that I could weigh that against the conditions of staying. Because if
Fair enough, Becky, but look, here's the deal. We don't have time to go to the cluster lead and find out what's the status of the roads. We're standing in front of this hotel right now. We got to decide, are we staying here tonight or are we going to move? Because we got to work. We got to get to work tomorrow. So it's getting on evening now. We can't drive at night. So if we're going to get an hour out of town, we better hit the road.
Oh, soon. We can't drive at night.
No, that's one of our, we can't drive at night. So if we're going to get to that other hotel, we better hit the road. If we're going to stay here, let's get checked in and have some dinner. I'm tired, and so are you and everybody else. We're jet lagged. We got to start working first thing in the morning. Let's make a decision, team lead.
All right. So Baba Ram, Pras, Vijaya, Suman, Dane, Stephen. What do we do here? What do we do?
Staying at this hotel, or are we going to move? We got to go.
We got to go. All right. Is there anyone who can provide? Here's the situation. I have probably been on these deployments before, but I have never been necessarily in this particular disaster. Everything is devastated. Where are we going? What are we doing? And why is the wait?
Every disaster is different. There's no.
We have a question. Why are the roads so bad? Is it because of poor drivers or poor roads or something else? Or is it just the fact that the vehicles that are available to shelter box teams just tend to be the leftovers after the big organization?
Really, if you're talking in general, why humanitarian aid workers are killed by car accidents?
Yeah, we have a question from Nepal.
Yeah, and that's the reality. There's the majority of humanitarian aid operations are in lesser developed countries. Road infrastructure isn't there to begin with. And I don't mean that in any negative way. The more developed countries can often handle these responses themselves, right? So when something happens in America, FEMA and our emergency system does a pretty good job. So, we're usually in lesser developed countries. Roads aren't great to begin with. And now there's been a disaster, whether it's an earthquake, a tsunami, a hurricane, who knows what's hit, but right. There's damage to the roads. That's just part of it. Another part of it is, a lot of these countries will drive a car to the death, to the ground. And there's, right. They'll run a car that's got no seat belts and bald tires because they have no other choice. Right. So, and if we're there to work, we want to find a vehicle that we can inspect, and it is, got good tires and good brakes, and it's sturdy, and it's got a horn that works, and it's got, seat belts, but it's
All right. So we got another question.
People. So yeah, we're getting caught up in the car thing. Let's
No, but we have to hey, we're getting questions from all over.
Yep.
So we've got another one. Have you ever found the available hotels so bad that you just could camp out in a shelter box? Is that an option?
We have camped in shelter box tents before. It is our last resort. And that is because those tents, once we use them, they're not somebody's home. And we want it to be somebody's temporary home. There's been lots of times like Haiti in 2010, everybody camped inside a chain link guarded UN compound because it was not safe. There was looting and violence. And so there was every agency, basically they took over the airport and we slept on the side of the tarmac in tents. We on that response, we also donated some tents to the Red Cross so that they could use them as hospital and doctor suites.
Oh, interesting. All right. So you guys, I'm not seeing people really say we need to know before, and I might ask Nettie to give me a little hint of an optimal question or an optimal thing to consider or one good thinking tactic. But before we do, you got to tell me, should we stay or should we go? Should we stay or should we go now? Which should we do?
Let me tell you, as they're thinking, Becky, let me tell you another little tidbit during our training. We are trained when we get to a hotel, we have to stay on the second or third floor. Ground floor is not safe because of theft and break-ins for our computer equipment, things like that. Anything higher than the third floor is too hard to get out on the emergency exit. It takes too long. So when we're in earthquake zones, it's second or third floor. We sleep with our clothes on and our boots on. If there's an aftershock, we're out the door. When we arrive at the hotel, we walk from our room. We all go and check in. We go and find out all the emergency exits on our floor. We walk from our room to the emergency exit and out to a rally point where we've all pre-designated. I mean, it's all about safety. We are following every kind of protocol you can imagine. We rally up back in the lobby and we know where everybody else's room is so that if there were a problem, we can make sure our team is safe and out.
Well, I think a lot of people should heed that advice even when they stay in a regular hotel, at least know where the exits are, because I was staying in a hotel in the shower when the alarm went off and was regretful that I had for this one particular time not made that mental note. All right. Does anyone want to see? Okay. No one is saying we're getting some questions, but no one is going on the line to say if we should stay or should we go. So in order to get a little closer, just a little closer, if you were me with your training, what would be the number one piece of information that you would love to have right now in this scenario? And how would I get it? Like, am I missing information, or do I have all the information I'm ever going to have?
Got everything you need right here to make a decision.
All right. So if this is the case, and this is truthfully what I would do, I know that aftershocks are, a very common occurrence. I know the likelihood of structural reinforcement in some of these countries is not great. And I also know the limitations of structural reinforcement. I spent many years in real estate, so I have a little bit of inside scoop about construction. So I would probably say, let's go, let's leave, let's go.
Would your followers agree?
Who agrees? Who agrees? Just come on. We're not going to tell the real reason until at least some people weigh in. I'm going to say, let's go.
No, go or stay. Just come on. Come on.
Stay, go. Right? Stay, go. And it takes a little while for them to see. And part of it is I don't see the stream at the exact time and whatever. But stay or go. Stay or go. Are people begging me? Am I getting a lot of pressure from potential aid recipients? Am I completely just give me an example while people weigh in, like some of the pressure that I might be feeling. Can you help me?
Kids, you're oftentimes you're the only white person. Little kids are just curious about you. Africa, when I was in Kenya and Ethiopia, it's like they just want to touch you. They want to run up and just pull on your pant leg, and there's nothing to worry about, but it is a distraction for sure.
Okay, so
And families are like, hey, what are you, are you here? Are you here to help? How are you helping? I need help. All the time there's distractions. You bet.
All right. So we've got some good ones. We've got some good ones. Vinay says we stay. Michael Allen Harrison, hi Michael, says we go. Baba Ram says we stay. Stephen says we go and be prepared to stay up all night to find a better alternative. Okay, if we stay up all night, I don't know how we're going to deliver aid the next day, but okay. And we've got Owana Liliana saying stay. All right, I say go, so it's about split. What? Tell us what happens. Tell us what's next.
So here's the deal. We moved. We did not stay.
Oh, you did not stay.
We did not stay. And here's why. What are our 3 rules? And what's number 1? Stay safe. That is the number 1 rule. And here's the other catch is when we're on a team, the highest threshold for risk, let me figure out the way to say this. The person with the lowest threshold for risk becomes the highest threshold for all of us.
Oh. And it's not like you're dealing with people who aren't trained. So everyone's trained. So if it's not like you're getting, hyper paranoid people.
It's important for everyone to feel safe and to
right.
make your voices heard when you're in an effective team. That's something to write down, everybody. Take that home.
Say it again.
It is important to know that everyone has a voice and everyone is heard. Their voice is respected. It's listened to. If you do not have that in your team, it will not be an effective team. That is a requirement for an effective team. It's part of communication. You need to have a place where you're safe and feel comfortable to voice your opinion without any ramifications in a negative way. Now,
all right.
Your opinion might be wrong and you might need some education and you need to be open to changing your opinion, but you need to be able to talk about it in a safe environment. That's part of
We have a good question around that I want to ask you. So Baba Ram asks, how far is it a practical idea to panic all the time about safety? Does one really find peace with his state of mind? Because we know that disasters are by and large unpredictable.
Yeah, that's a tough one, really. We can't do anything if we're hurt or dead. So safety is a big deal, right? I mean, we got to stay safe to be able to get the job done and represent Shelterbox. We have to do that. It's a decision, and lots of times we go in risky situations. I mean, there's in the Caribbean after Irma and Maria, right? There were islands that we could only get to by boat. Everything's destroyed, and there was an island that we needed to get to, and it was a very rough crossing, and it was choppy, and it was not the safest thing to do, but we talked to headquarters. We set up a plan. We talked about check-in times to make sure that they knew we would be safe. We've got sat phones and things like that. So we do take risks, but they are educated risks, and they are fully vetted with a team of people that are going to make sure we are doing it as safe as possible if we undergo something that's risky.
Well, this is what's interesting about this case. Oh, we got some. Oh, sorry about that. We had a little echo. But this is what's interesting about this case is there's only so much information that you can have before you make a decision. So a lot of the information that you do have is in the preparation.
Yeah.
Listen,
in all honesty, this one isn't, this isn't, I guess it is a life or death decision, but it's not this massive impact that makes it high stakes, right? It is a big decision because it's part of our team. But let me keep going. Let me keep going, or we're never going to get to the rest of these scenarios. Just so you know, the team left. We stayed at a hotel an hour away. Went past the hotel the following day. There were aftershocks afterwards, and the hotel that we were originally supposed to stay in was completely destroyed. Becky, it gave you you questioned your judgment on staying there when you saw that destruction.
As the leader,
judgment as a team leader in keeping your team safe. And I think what's important here is you got to remember leadership's about listening to your team, and you got to remember you got to take care of that team. And one of the biggest traps for us is, hey, we've stayed in places worse than this, and it hasn't been a problem before. It's never a problem until it's a problem, right? We've been doing this for 20 years, haven't had a problem yet.
Well, people who've been on this show in the past know that one of the good thinking, critical thinking killers is an over-reliance on authority. And, so there becomes this dichotomy, like this, I'm the team leader, I've been here before, but you've gone through the training. And I like the idea of you saying that the platform starts for safety at the highest, someone has concern. The highest concern is where we kind of all recalibrate. I think that's really helpful. I know that you have other scenarios, but we have to keep it short. And, it's fun that everyone's participating. Anyone has any questions and weigh in, it's great. But I also know that one of the things, and I'd love you to be able to come on again and share some more scenarios. Can I weasel you to come in and let me know? Do you want to hear more scenarios with Nettie? You want to take some more trips around the world delivering disaster relief? If you do,
I got a ton of them. Listen, I got a ton of them, and it's super fun.
So we'll I'm sure that we're going to hear from people that they want to see you back. But one of the things that really drew me to Shelterbox is really not the front end, kind of the decision making and good thinking protocols, but which is, I call it, the pre-mortem, right? But the post-mortem. Can you share a little bit about that? And before you do, there's a question from Dane saying, is there a way to deem safety the top priority without being consumed with worry and or fear? I think that's a good one to address before you get into the post-mortem.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And it's so situation dependent, honestly. Training and team dynamic, right? If it's four of us that are very experienced and we're, listen, response team members are all walks of life and all different types of people. Professional photographers and arborists and, plant pathologists and all kinds of realtors, all kinds of things. It's people that have a lot of flexibility of time, a lot of realtors and a lot of insurance salespeople. It's people that have flexibility of time. They're a little older in their career, but not everybody's, super fit. Everybody can walk 8 miles, with a pack on their back or something like that, but it doesn't mean you can run a marathon or anything. Well, so some of our teams are, physically more capable. It's just a fact. Right. So I think it just depends on team dynamic and when we're there and in a situation and we all kind of look at each other and say, you guys all right with this? And if the answer is, I'm a little sketchy, then it's no. And if it's, let's give it a try, then we give it a try. It could paralyze you for sure.
And Pross even says,
analysis paralysis. You're just overthinking things, and sometimes you just got to get on with it. And there is risk involved, right? There's risk of aftershocks. There's risk of all kinds of things that are external that we have no control over. So, it's just one of those things that risk is inherent. We have to understand it, and our team dynamic has to be able to deal with it.
I think it goes back to the training.
Different situation. It's situational.
Yeah, and it really does go back to the training and preparation, because Pross asked a similar question. No matter how much prepared we are, some fear of unknown will kill the level of confidence, and then we get into the state of panic. But I think, to your point, you're not going into this, it's not just like anyone can be a responder for Shelterbox. No. First of all, there's a self-selection. Then there's an actual selection, and then there's a long training and preparation. And that's a little bit about what we're doing with good thinking is we're doing training. We're training our brains for improving how to think a little bit with each time we get together. So share a little bit about
Becky, I would posit that if it were a different team dynamic, we perhaps would have stayed in that hotel, second or third floor, and I think we would have got out.
Yeah. You think you would have gotten out?
Yeah.
So
I
you
mean,
think that even if the
like I
decision to
said, when
stay,
I'm in an earthquake zone and I know there's fear of aftershocks, I'm asking for the room closest to the stairs on the second or third floor. And I am sleeping with my clothes on and my boots on and my bag ready to go right by the door. And at the first hint of a aftershock, I'm out the door. I mean, I'm not kidding you. 28 seconds is what I was, less than
so
28.
this is really good, because a lot of you might think, wow, okay, therefore the right answer was automatically to go. But the idea of a counterfactual is pulling one thing out from the decision and seeing what the outcome could be. And I think you just pointed out something really interesting, which is you cannot assume, without at least teasing apart the assumption, that staying would have essentially killed the team. You
Yeah.
can't assume that. So, and that training also is what I love so much in the post-mortem. And that is,
that's right. We got
so
sight.
that's what I want you. So I love that. And this is where we're going to end on this, because these are the way that Shelter Box goes back in and evaluates their decision process is so profoundly different than other humanitarian organizations. Or other organizations, maybe even your organization. And that is one of the main things that drew me to Shelter Box in the first place. So if you could share a little bit about that before we wrap up.
Me too. It's super impressive. So we do a thing every after action review, and guys, write this down and put it into practice in your personal, professional, private lives. 4 questions. What did we do well? We always did something well. There's always, even if we failed miserably, we got to find the silver lining, right? And sometimes we do fail. Sometimes we don't get the job done. Sometimes we drop the ball. It happens. We're human. So we look at it and we say, what did we do well? What went well in that? We great communication or whatever. We find things that went well. What didn't go so well? No, that's a key. What didn't go so well? Whatever in a distribution, whatever it is. Hey, I was way at the end of this distribution line and you're way at the front taking IDs and you were going way too fast. I needed you to slow down and I couldn't communicate with you. I couldn't tell you, slow down, man, slow down. I can't check them out fast enough. Maybe it's something like that. Oh, so next time, what do we do? Right? It's constantly
So what do you do in something like that? Is it just slow down, or do you look at other options?
Oh, we look at all kinds of options. So what didn't go so well? So the next question, 3, what would we do differently next time?
Okay.
Oh, what would I do differently? Let's get some of those little Motorola handsets that are just short radios. You can have one at the start and I can have one at the back that costs like $20 at Costco. Done. Right? Battery powered. You don't need to cell service. You don't need Wi-Fi. Any of that is just a little shortwave radio. That was the answer. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's looking at questions like that, looking at things and questioning our action. So what went well? What didn't go so well? What would we do differently next time? And what did we learn? What did we learn? We learned that, we need better communication to be effective at distributions, whatever it is. We do those 4 questions after every action. It is really important for self-reflection. And Becky, you said one of the things that drew you to Shelter Box was this assessment. It is one of the things that drew me to Shelter Box. It's this constantly going back and looking at ourselves and judging ourselves, constantly judging ourselves on what we've done. We go back 6 months after every deployment. We send a team. It's called a MEAL team, monitoring, evaluation, accountability. It's a big one, accountability. We got to be accountable for actions, accountability and learning. We want to learn from every response and we want to do it better every time. So we're constantly asking, we're looking at our equipment. How's it holding up under weather and wear and tear? The tent is like a 13th version of the tent. It started out, the windows rolled down. So it's really good ventilation in tropical areas. The airflow goes in the bottom, goes up over the top and goes out. It's really good airflow, right? The way that it's designed. It's actually cooler in the tent than it is outside in a lot of sunny areas.
Wow.
It's an amazing tent.
So was it always that way? I mean, you said you've had many versions.
Constant redesigning, but they've designed this airflow. They got it. The windows are down at the bottom, and then there's some vent windows at the top. So the way that it works, the windows need to be open, rain or shine. What happened is those windows were open in a tropical area, and we found out they were pooling up water, and it was a vector for mosquitoes.
How did you find that out?
in one of these monitoring and evaluation deployments, we came back, we're like, hey, how's everything working? Oh, it's great, thank you for everything, blah blah blah. The only issue is this. Or, hey, our solar light stopped working after 8 days. Or, sure could have used more of these water purifiers, or whatever it is, right? And in one of those, we discovered, oh, look, there's water pooling up in here, and they've got to have the windows open all the time. It's tropical, it rains. So we went back to our tent designers. Well, guess what? Now the windows roll up, and there's a little awning that you can pull out and stake to the ground so that it can be pouring with rain. And, they roll up now and Velcro up at the top, so they're not pooling water down below. It's little things like that that we wouldn't learn if we're not going back and asking the question, what did we do wrong, or what didn't go so well, right? So, I'm sure there's organizations out there that just give and go. They leave their stuff and they're gone. They don't know how it works. They don't know how well it worked for the beneficiary. And that's where we come in. We want to be accountable to the beneficiary. We don't want to give them a bunch of stuff they don't need or want.
Right.
Have them, where they've got all their belongings in a box anyway. They've lost their house, and now we give them a bunch of crap they don't want to carry around. No. So we got to be accountable. We got to learn from our responses, and we got to keep doing better. Now, how you can use this in your life. You ask those same questions. I got a daughter who's got a full ride scholarship for women's golf. She's a really good golfer. After a hole, it's such a mental game, golf, and you can really be out of the game if you let it get you. So as she gives herself 3 steps away from the hole to be pissed off or angry. 1, 2, 3, and that's it. It's on her 3rd step, she's done, and she does her after action. What I do good on that hole? What didn't go so good? What am I going to do differently? And it sets her mind up for the next hole. Okay, my wife's an ICU registered nurse. She brought this to her hospital. They do it after every code now, whether they save the patient or lose the patient. Anytime somebody codes, they do their thing. And then they do the 4 questions afterwards. Hey, what?
See, and I think if everyone here,
even if they lose the patient, what did we do well? Hey, you jumped right in there on the compressions. You were given chest compressions right away. We really worked effectively as a team. Just lost this one. It's powerful. It's effective, and I just gave you 2 examples of personal and professional, how you could draw that into your life. So you guys think about how you can take something like that and pull it into your life and be rewarded for it.
Fantastic. I think that is those 4 questions. Those are kind of 4 quintessential good thinking questions. And I hope that everyone can take some lessons, good thinking lessons away from today's conversation. We'll have Nettie back. He won't escape us. And then also wanted to let you know about next week, next Monday, we will be elaborating on some of these good thinking questions and exploring how you can trust your intuition. There's some tips and tricks rooted in deep science. But we'll have some fun. So thank you very, very much. Thank you guys all for being here. Sorry if I didn't get to your questions. Sorry, Nettie couldn't see your questions, but you guys are awesome. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Becky, thanks for having me. And thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thanks for being here. You were awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers.